So, hello guys. I've been thinking about SCD a little bit, and I decided to make another how to SCD video, and I will not be going over the categories, and I don't know if I will actually ever do that, because honestly, I've been quite busy with university first of all. It's my first semester, so yeah, that's that. Even though I will be finishing my exams in 3 days, so I might actually get into applying more how to do SCD videos, right? But this has been kind of weighing on my mind for quite a bit, and so I want to just address it in video format, right? And that's basically the utility of some categories that we use. I think that SCD is in quite the weird place when it comes to the categories we use and how we actually evaluate intelligence of certain characters. And I know I might be a little controversial in this aspect, but I believe that the system that we use in SCD right now is like heavily flawed, especially with how we use categories, how we perceive certain categories. And I think it needs to change from like the fundamentals, the very fundamentals from which we built SCD upon. So these categories like strategy, planning, manipulation, they've been around for like 3 years, and nobody tried to really question them, right? Nobody. I have no issues with the categories themselves, but more so with the subcategories for each category and how we evaluate it in terms of outsmarting capability later on, how it reflects on certain matchups, right? That's basically where I have a problem. And I will explain it with like the most simple way and simple category that I can use, which is strategy or planning, right? Especially in planning, because I can give a really good example right here in terms of Kokichi, because Kokichi is my main character that I scale, right? So it's easier for me to do it this way. So in planning, we use like I don't know, like 5 to 6 categories, right? And we usually determine which character is better in planning in terms of which character actually takes more categories from the other. I think that's completely ridiculous way of scaling and attributing which character actually wins, right? And I will explain why. Because see, Kokishi's plan, he had like one or zero contingencies in his plan. He had no contingencies. Well, does that mean that his plan was bad in terms of contingencies? Well, technically, in terms of contingencies, yes, but does that even affect the quality of his plan? And I would say no, obviously not. Because, see, Kokichi shaped the situation in such a way that it would be physically impossible for no, it would be possible of course, but given their psychological constitution, how the characters are, how they behave, which Kokichi analyzed beforehand, he determined that setting up contingencies is not necessary because the actual plan itself hinged on certain emotional and psychological dispositions that characters like Shuichi or Maki have. And given that Kokichi knew they will act certain ways, they would be basically fulfilling his own plan. And Kokichi also knew that his intentions were not clear to them, right? And so, what's the point of setting up contingencies when seemingly nothing can go wrong if they act in the ways that Kokichi predicted, right? There is absolutely no need to set up contingencies. So it doesn't limit his plan at all. And this can be said for any other category. Well, maybe not any other category, but in most of the categories, this can be equally applied, right? In strategy planning, especially, this is the most visible. When a certain character is lacking in a certain category when it comes to planning and strategy, that doesn't make his planning or strategy worse or worse off than, for example, the strategy of another individual. So the categories that we use are supposed to be kind of outlines of what we should focus on when evaluating characters, but they shouldn't be dogmatic. We shouldn't follow them to the pinpoint, right? We shouldn't completely be restricted by these categories. We should be able to freely maneuver out of the categories if they serve no utility in SCD. Or not in SCD, but in that particular situation where the characters actually were in, right? Because it is rational that, given that okay, let's assume that the plan was really amazing. I will not be kind of wanting to spread my agenda, Kokichi agenda here, right? But let's just assume, for the sake of the argument, that the plan was really amazing, right? And so it would be irrational to suppose, in my opinion, that Kokichi wouldn't be able, or is just not able, to implement some simple contingencies to the plan. There must be some ulterior explanation to it, right? And that ulterior explanation is precisely that. It was there was no need to set up contingencies or any other additional layers anymore to the plan, because the plan was already so well structured that it had basically it basically already succeeded from the get-go, right? And that's the main issue with the utility of categories. So when we look at categories like manipulation, right? Some people use 5, some people use 4, some people use 6 categories, but the standard 4 are emotional manipulation, logical manipulation. These are the opposites, right? And then it's the wait, fuck. My mind just went kind of blank right now. Oh yeah, indirect and direct manipulation, right? And some people also use individual and mass manipulation, but here's the catch, right? If manipulation tests the exact same kind of faculty for manipulation that every other category does, which is probably not the case for example, logical and emotional manipulation, right? Because logical manipulation hinges more on actual persuasiveness, logical reasoning, and it just generally rests on more on thinking and logical reasoning than on EQ, whereas emotional manipulation hinges more on EQ rather than that kind of logical reasoning thinking, right? So they do not test the exact same functions or same properties of manipulation. But can that be really said about, for example, direct indirect manipulation? I mean, seemingly, I think indirect and direct manipulation tests the basically exact same capacity for manipulation. So we can, in principle, separate it into direct and indirect, but what's the point? I mean, to me, it serves no utility in SCD. If they test the same function, then whoever showed the best feat in that specific function, not category, then he should be better in that category, right? So if one character has better direct manipulation than other, but the other character has better indirect manipulation than other, but the character with direct manipulation showed way better feat in direct manipulation than the other one, and seemingly also better than indirect manipulation of the other character, then it seems natural to me that the character should take the general faculty of manipulation when it comes to directiveness, right? I mean, I think that's pretty logical. And we can pretty much do that by thinking to ourselves, if we can analyze indirect and direct manipulation on equal grounds, if we can compare a direct manipulation feat to an indirect manipulation feat when it comes to the general, well, principle of manipulation. And to me, I think, yes, we can do that. And if we can do that, that really just highlights the fact that what we are actually evaluating in separating individual and direct manipulation is the same principle of manipulation. There's no difference to it, right? There might be very minuscule difference, like very, very small, but that's negligible in the result. I think we should strive for more utility in SCD and lowering the capacities, lowering the amount of categories that we use for scaling, evaluating which character is better than another is fundamental to it, right? That's very fundamental. So we should look whether some categories actually serve any utility to SCD at all. And if not, we should either combine them or remove them completely from the surface of SCD, right? Same can be said for example, logical reasoning, right? Logical reasoning, abductive, inductive, and deductive. Deductive is basically it's basically a system of reasoning that describes necessity, right? What is necessary, right? Basically, given the logical form, but when it comes to inductive and abductive reasoning, they seemingly test the same kind of reason-inducing variable, right? They both kind of focus on probabilistic reasoning, on probability, right? So they both manipulate probability and work with that. And the fact that they have a different logical form, to me, I don't think that really matters, right? Because it tests the general capacity of a character to think in probabilistic forms, right? To manipulate and guide certain actions or predict certain actions through probability, possibility, right? And so seemingly to me, it tests the same variable. So we should probably just combine these two categories into one, into probabilistic reasoning, right? And maybe, just maybe, we can even combine deductive reasoning along with them. But here I would be a little skeptical. I think we can make an argument against it. So I will not go into there, but it's just an idea, right? We can technically, I think, combine deductive reasoning into it as well. But yeah, that's the general idea, and I think you can make some kind of examples of that with with like any category that we use. Any category that can be used can be conducive to this restricting of categories and allowing utility to not overlap or just remove categories that are completely devoid of utility, right, in the first place. And I think I think that's it. I don't got really nothing much to tell you apart from that. So yeah, take care.